Hey guys, welcome back to Musings of Maverick channel. Maverick here, ready for episode 17 of Dr. Stone. So, from last episode, we entered into sort of a flashback arc, right? Well, I guess not really an arc, but at least a few flashback episodes, where we follow the story of Sinku's father and his fellow astronauts back in, 3,700 years ago, before the petrification beam hit humanity, right? Um, and as I mentioned at the end of last episode, so these six are trying to save humanity now, right? They're trying to get back to Earth, and they, of course, eventually failed this mission in the end, because that's how we still have the current story as it is right now. But it is quite interesting to see how exactly they failed and what they actually accomplished, right? So they actually did leave some heritage to the current day people, and specifically the sort of connection between Senku and Senku's father over these 3,700 years is, at least for me, it's a pretty good story and quite nice to look at as well. It's wholesome in its own little way, right? Not really sure how they're going to end this episode. I assume with Senku and company finding their heritage, but no, not really sure, right? So I suppose let's just get into the episode and find out. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Yeah. The beam. I can't wait until they actually reveal, like, what caused this, who caused this, how exactly did they manage to cause this. It's still mystery even in the manga. So, I can't spoil anything. I'm as clueless as you guys. That's quite smart. Oh, and here's the opening. Since no one mentioned for me to keep the opening in, I'll just be skipping it as usual. So, see you guys in a second. And back. 100 Nights and Thousand Skies. I actually really like the episode titles of Dr. Stone. Some of them are quite nice to look at, quite poetic in its own way. Boom. Armageddon? Anyone? Now this part was quite confusing to me initially when I read the manga, because that's what's supposed to happen with these kinds of vehicles. I mean, they're not like space shuttles and whatnot, or the current reusable rockets from SpaceX and what is it, Blue Horizon? So they're supposed to land in water, and they should have floating devices there. They're not designed to land on land. Because I believe they're using this so as, well, yeah, it should be landing in water. Like, that there's a lot of things to roast in terms of that scene and that scenario, but whatever. Oh, they're actually adding some. Huh. They're actually adding some anime-only interactions and scenes and whatnot. I don't believe that was in the manga. Or maybe I just... I mean, it has been a while since I've read it. Hmm. It's nice that there's, 3 couples, right? This is also I hmm. Hmm. Interesting. I have to go back and reread the manga a bit later. That's also quite the conviction that he has, right? He has no idea of knowing if someone who's petrified can be revived. Ah. Hmm. Mhm. Yeah. And there we go. The heritage of over 3,000 years. And that settles that. Ah. Ah, okay. Hey, hey. Nope, they did not return. And they actually didn't I believe in the manga they directly said that the reason was pneumonia. She died from pneumonia. Oh, okay. Re-entry. And here's all the children. Hmm. えIt is war! Alright, see you guys after the ending. Alrighty, so there we conclude the flashback. It pretty much ended as I thought it would, which is passing down a gift from Senku's father to Senku himself, which is, in this case, he's talking about the village, right? And of course, at the very end there, we have a little foreshadowing of what's going to happen in the future. Yes, indeed, we are going to be starting the official confrontation between Senku's forces and Tsukasa's forces, right? But that's, that's for later. Let's talk about this episode first, and more specifically, I'd like to do a quick recap because it's very easy to get confused if you're not following it properly, right? So, long things short, the 6 astronauts landed at an island which is really near mainland Japan, but a ways off from the mainland, right? It's not that easy to get there. And there were 3 couples there. One couple eventually succumbed to pneumonia, which is Connie and Shamil. One couple tried to travel to the mainland, to Japanese mainland, in order to search for medicine, which is Dahlia and Yakov, the original husband and wife duo, 2 who were doctors, and their status is unknown. And so on the little island that they landed on, only Senku and Lillian remained, right? And I mean, sorry, not Senku. Senku's father, Byak. It's so hard for me to pronounce his name. I just call him Senku's father. And Lillian eventually also died as well, quite young, probably also to pneumonia. Although it's not 100% confirmed, I believe. And Senku's father, in the case, he still continued to live on, and he prepped a lot of gifts, right, for Senku. We only see one here, which is basically the 100 stories and the eventual descendants of the original 6 astronauts, sort of like, his gift to Senku is these descendants who can help him along his journey to restore civilization. And by the way, the reason that they went to Japan is the mainland of Japan is because the first of the 100 stories told them to eventually travel there, right? And when they traveled there, they also brought the tombstone of Senku's father with them, and they eventually settled down in Ishigami village. Right. It's actually not the last we see of Senku's father. He's prepared some other gifts as well, although those will be sprinkled much later into the work. And so we'll not talk. We'll see those in due time, right? But don't worry, we will see him again, having more of an impact on the story. And really, yeah, that pretty much sums up the recap of this. And honestly, this is at the point where the series, I keep on saying that the series really starts to take off. It starts to become really, really interesting, and the scale of it becomes really big. Well, at the same time, it also becomes absolutely ridiculous, right, in terms of its actual story, right? There's lots of coincidences, lots of hand-waving in terms of how logically speaking this can happen, right? Like there's like just the fact that his descendants, Senku's father's descendants, were eventually able to make their way back to mainland Japan and found a village and actually be be found by Senku in the present day. That is a miracle in of itself, right? But with that said, I feel like one thing that the anime does well is that it sort of makes a division between the actual science of it and the storytelling of it, the plot of it, right? The science, for the most part, is still fundamentally sound, and that's something that hasn't changed since the first episode, since the first chapter. But the story is absolutely getting more and more ridiculous. I mentioned this a long time before, that I was kind of tricked into watching the original work as well. I started with the manga, I still read the manga, and I really thought that the manga was going to be more focused on hard science and more sort of like a survival series, right? And I was definitely wrong there. And it's since turned into something a little bit more epic, if you will. So you got a lot of coincidences and a lot of feel-good moments, a lot of fantasy fulfillment and whatnot. And it's okay, right? It's okay to have that. It's a reason why a lot of other fantasy works are popular as well. And I feel like it makes this sort of blend very seamless, in the fact that even though it's a really feel-good kind of anime, it still tries to be rooted in science, right? So that is, if even though a lot of times I would call out the sort of logicalness or whatnot of other series, in this case I do give it a pass because I feel like it knows it's being ridiculous itself, it's self-aware of this the fact, and it's just going along with it, right? And that's something that I will accept as a feature of the work. And also they did, as I mentioned within the episode, they did add a few more scenes within the anime here, specifically in regards to Connie and Shamil. Just some here and there, right, sprinkled throughout. And I noticed it was in the last episode as well. So I guess maybe they're trying to stretch out the actual episode a bit so that they can end on a proper cliffhanger, if you will. But it doesn't fundamentally change the story. In fact, it sort of supplements this story in certain ways. And so yeah, that pretty much is this episode. And if you guys, especially for those of you who are anime only, were, think a little bit more about it, you'll notice that there's actually a lot of unsolved mysteries here that could be foreshadowing for something in the future, right? And some things that even us as manga viewers don't really know yet as well. So, like the big, the elephant in the room is probably the petrification beam, right? It originated in South America. They are in Japan. Sinku and company are in Japan. How exactly are they going to be able to get to South America to investigate it? Is that needed at all? Don't really know, right? And manga viewers don't know as well. Another thing that's revealed in this episode is that Sinku and Senku's father, Byak something, whatever it's called, are not actually related by blood, right? So it is I guess he was adopted by him, something like that. And so Senku's true parents' identities are unknown. And it could be a possibility that will play a certain role in the future. That is also unknown so far in the manga. And that's also something that might potentially be interesting. And of course, if you guys recall, with the three couples, one of the couples tried to leave. They went to the mainland in order to try and find medicine. Right, the couple of Dahlia and Yakov. Their whereabouts and whatnot are unknown. We don't know what kind of fate met them. So it's entirely possible that they will have another part in the future as well. Maybe they eventually reached Japanese mainland. Maybe they drifted off into some other place and then continue living on there. We don't know. But that is something to also look out for, and some food for thought, I guess you could say. So yeah, and that's pretty much everything I want to talk about for episode 17 of Dr. Stone. Starting from next episode, as we see at the very end there, we're going to be preparing for war, and that means a lot more stuff related with, you know, actual weaponry and all the other kinds of fundamental and foundational stuff that can help one win this kind of war against brute force, right? It's not only just weapons. There's other things that can be weaponized that might not inherently be a weapon of themselves or being used to actively, you know, shoot or stab someone. And that's where a lot of the interesting parts come in. And it's only going to get more ridiculous from here. Let me just tell you this. So hold on to your butts. Oh, and that was pretty much it. I'll see you guys next week as well. Until then, bye-bye.